All right. I think I will get started. We have a good number of folks. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for sharing the data that you can't live without. Really appreciate it. Helps set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. Amanda, do you mind advancing for us? Thank you. So I am Kelly McMahon, and I'm from the Carnegie Foundation, and behalf on the GRAD partnership organizing members, I'm going to serve as the MC for today's meeting. So thank you so much for joining me. I just want to call out some of our other organizing partners. So we have the American Institutes for Research and the Barr Center, Everyone Graduates Center at Johns Hopkins. We have the Network for College Success and the National Center for Learning Disabilities, Rural Schools Collaborative, Schott Foundation, and Talent Development Secondary. Thank you all for being here, for those who are from those organizations, and if you're for all the work that we're doing as organizing members. I appreciate it. But also you all being here. So you're also our community members. So thank you for being here. We'd love to hear who's in the room with us. So if you could take a moment and just drop in the chat your first name, your role, location, and your feeling today. How are you feeling, just in one word? So I will model that. So I'm Kelly. I'm a senior associate at Carnegie Foundation. And my location, I'm in Menlo Park, California. And my feeling today is I'm very excited. I'm excited to hear from our speaker today, Liz Kirby, and also just to see so many friends here in the space. So thank you for joining, those who are new and those who have come back. It's really great to see you. So if you take a moment, I'll just give a pause. It's nice to see friends. It's good to see you. Now I want to chit chat with some of you though. Ask how your summers were, the back to school kind of questions. All right. Well, great. Having a sense of who's in the room with us. It's nice to see you. Thank you for joining. In today's session, we'll follow a similar moment. We're going to hear from, in a moment, we're going to hear from our speaker, and then we'll have breakouts, and you'll get a chance to hopefully meet some more of the folks who are introducing themselves and saying hi in the chat below. Amanda, if you could advance for us. So the GRAD Partnership for Student Success, just to remind folks about what we're doing, we're partnering with communities to use high quality student success systems. So in the past, these have often been referred to as on-track systems or early warning indicator systems. They have lots of different names, and we're referring to them as student success systems, so that schools are empowered to graduate all students ready for the future. High quality student success systems are transformative on multiple levels, and they focus on these four really important components. So supportive relationships, holistic and timely data, improvement response systems, and shared mindsets. And in this community, we're hoping to sort of touch on all of these and talk about them more, and GRAD Partnership will be sharing more about these over the next couple months and the years ahead. So our community of practice, this space in particular, is really meant to connect people who want to implement. So you may be new to on-track work. Thank you for being here. You are welcome. For those who are improving their existing systems, or those who are innovating, thinking about new ways to extend the systems and the work that you've been doing with on-track. We want to enable shared learning. So I think we can do more together than we can on our own. So use this space to share our learning. We want to generate motivation and inspiration. So to keep doing this work, it's hard work, but we know we're doing it together. So to continue to fuel that. And then we are defined by our mutual engagement. So this is more than just hopefully sharing good ideas, but also engaging with and learning from each other around it. Our agreements, thank you, Amanda, are to, in this space, we hope that it's a we, not me space, that we share stories and airtime, that we accept non-closure. This work is really hard. It's likely that we may not get all of the answers in this space, but it's a continuing conversation. That it's Chatham House rules. So as a community of practice, it's meant to be a space where sometimes we learn from failures, because those are sometimes the best opportunities to learn, but we maybe don't share those details of where the people's failures are, but what the ideas are, and we keep the details here in the space. So Chatham House rules. That by sharing, we learn. So both sharing and getting a chance to hear other people's, but also each of us taking an opportunity to share our thoughts, even if they may be not fully formed yet because we're in this space, but still there's a huge opportunity that we learn when we do share. And that we make room for joy. So try as best we can, we all learn a little bit better when we're having fun. And so make sure that in your spaces or when you're interacting with each other, that we agree to kind of make room for some joy as well. All right, so to set the stage for our speaker, who I'll introduce in a moment, today's topic is seeing and understanding students with data. I thought it would be good to just prime the session and bring into the space a quote from Shane Saphir and Jamila Dugan's recent book that was published in last year, 2021, around street data. And this kind of a reintroduction, or thinking about, not a reintroduction, sorry, a reimagining of what we think about data, and sort of broadening and pushing on the paradigms in which a lot of our accountability and testing policies have sort of shaped data, and thinking about how we might reimagine those. So here's the quote: that even as the system seems to fall apart around us, street level data, which is the concept that they introduced in this book, are ubiquitous, offering deep insights into student and educator experiences. Street data is the qualitative and experiential data that emerges at eye level on lower frequencies when we train our brains to to discern it. These data fill our hearts and keep us up at night as we witness children's resilience and struggle to stay engaged, socially connected, and emotionally well. So this notion of thinking about the different ways in which we could think about data. I'm really excited to share with you, or to introduce, Liz Kirby, who today, Liz is the superintendent of Cleveland Heights, University Heights School District in Ohio. She's been there since 2019. Prior to that, she was the chief of school strategy and planning at Chicago Public Schools. She is a longtime educator, been in the system for 23 years, serving as teacher and principal and central office administrator. And she has depths and wells of knowledge to share with us. And so I'm excited to pass it over to her, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about seeing and understanding students with data. So Liz, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Kelly? Because I put on my earphones. Okay.
Yes,
All
can
right.
hear you and see you.
Yes, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, GRAD partnership team, for the opportunity to talk just a little bit about my experience and practices in this space in particular. I can't believe how long I've been in education. Every time I hear those numbers, it shocks me because every day I get up and I feel like I'm brand new in my role and position, whatever that is. This work around this on-track work, ninth grade work, graduation work is so critical, as you all know. When I first started in the work, I thought its criticality from the perspective of, how important it is to focus on ninth grade in terms of students graduating and being successful even post high school. But now that I've had the opportunity to work in a lot of different roles and see a lot of things nationally, I definitely understand the national urgency around high school success, both academic success, but also social emotional learning success for students, and how important that is for students, their families, our schools, our districts, but our country as well. There are a lot of things that worry me in education, and it worries me in particular post-COVID, knowing that there are additional hurdles that we have to clear. But I'm really hopeful to have a space like the GRAD partnership where we can share ideas, experiences, questions, thoughts, and resources to push forward. Our country really depends on our work. Our communities really depend on our work. So it's really important and incredible work to continue to do. I remember when I was an assistant principal and we were starting the ninth grade on track work. This was like 20 years ago at my previous high school. And as I saw the power of the intentionality of supporting students in ninth grade in particular, I knew that there were students that finished high school that would not have finished high school for sure, like hundreds of students who would not have finished high school without that intentional focus. But not only that, I know that there are students who had significant challenges, even outside of high school, that would have been an even bigger barrier without the practiced and focused work of educators. So educators are powerful, and I want us always to tap into our power on behalf of students. So in terms of what I want to do with this time here, and let me start my clock because I can talk a lot, and I want to make sure you have time to talk amongst each other. There are three things, you can go to the next slide, that I want to talk about. One, I want to share my background just in this work, especially the ninth grade work. I can talk about it from the lens of a teacher, an administrator, a big district central office administrator, and a smaller district central office administrator now. I'm going to talk about some of the processes that I've seen to be successful and some that I'm working on in my role. And then just kind of identify some lessons to learn and keep in mind to inform districts who are on this journey. And it's a new journey because, as I said, we have some new challenges that we're all dealing with. I love this, when I hear the street level data, I love that quote. And I just thought about this as I was reading the slide with everyone else. So I'm gonna talk about how we use like a lot of different data to kind of move towards our outcomes. But I recently returned back to the high school where I was a principal, Kenwood Academy in Chicago, Illinois, and I was speaking, doing an opening kind of keynote to start the school year off. I hadn't been in the school in 10 years. And one of the teachers said to me, one thing I remember about you as a principal is that you were always in the halls during every passing period, and the kids would start running when they saw you. Now, I don't think that was probably a good thing, and I did have positive, interactions, but for me, it was very important to be right on the ground, to see what was happening in the classrooms, but also in the hallways, and use those opportunities to collect data. So those students may have thought I was there to make sure that they weren't late. And yes, I was also doing that. I was also listening, paying attention, seeing who were the classrooms the kids were rushing to get to. Where were the classrooms the kids were kind of taking their time? What's happening with that? What were some of the obstacles or some of the friendships that may have been causing some conflicts for students? Who were the students who were never in class and what was happening with them? So like, that's kind of like, that was my street level, one way to get street level data just in the practice of a classroom. And one thing I'll say to those of you who don't work in schools, it's important to stay in schools and to continue to observe and to see what's happening on the ground at the student and the teacher and the principal level to help inform your work. So next slide. So very quickly, the one thing that I'll say here is I am a teacher's kid. Both my parents were educators, 40 years apiece in the Cleveland Municipal School District. So I love school, I love teaching, I love the classroom, I love the work, and especially for our students who come from historically marginalized communities in our country. Education is a foundation of freedom, and in particular, post-secondary education is a foundation for freedom for our students. And so the recent, forgiveness of debt, I think, was incredible and important for our country, but especially those students that come from traditionally marginalized communities, African American students, Hispanic American students, students of other demographics as well. So a little bit about my district on the next slide. I do have a typo on there. We have about 5,000 students, not 500. We are a district that is surrounds, one of the districts that surrounds the Cleveland, Ohio. So we're first ring district. We serve 3 communities, Cleveland Heights, University Heights, and a very small portion of South Euclid, and we have about 900 students. Our demographics you see there, we're 72% African American, 17% white, multiracial 5%, Hispanic or Latino 4%, Asian 1.5%, and then less than 1% of our students are American Indian and Pacific Islanders. Our most recent published graduation rate for the class of 2020 for the 4-year was 87.8%, and for our 5-year rate 94%. Our class of 2021 earned $14.3 million in scholarships, and our class of 2022 earned about $17 million in college scholarships. So one thing, you can go to the next slide. We recently adopted a new strategic plan for our district that will serve us through 2026. And there are 2 goals in particular that connect directly to this conversation about pathways and supports and the data that we use to get there. One is our 4-year graduation goal of 95% of our students graduating on time, and 90% of our students pursuing college and or a viable and clear career pathway in particular. So we do have a true post-secondary focus in our district, and we're working hard on those metrics. And that connects directly to the work around graduation as well. One of the things that that was newer for our district in terms of its intentionality, I would say, is a focus in particular, some focus key performance indicators on things like 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade success. This was different than my experience in Chicago public schools, where there was very clear accountability connected to the success of 9th grade students. That was not the case in Ohio. And I'll talk a little bit about the difference between one state and another state and how that has to really inform. You have to be really thoughtful about what that means when you're doing work that's in a different context. But we have in our strategic plan laid out very specifically what metrics we have to help us get to that 95% graduation rate. So if we think about this kind of on track term, our goal for our 9th grade students is that 95% of that class, which is our class of 2026, will have 5 credits by the end of their 9th grade year. So we currently have 432 students. And then our goal is to have 409 of those students to have the minimum number of credits, 5 credits by the end of that year. And it actually wasn't a quick trip to get to that specificity, because there's lots of things that go into strategic plan development, key performance indicator plan development, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So the next slide just kind of shows our trajectory of where we are with our 4-year graduation rate. And the district has made some nice movement from 2016 through 2019 in particular. And we showed some dips kind of in 2020 and also some flat, it's not represented there, but some flat performance for 2021. So we know that we definitely have more work to do in this area. We've learned some good lessons and what we've been doing these past 5 or 6 years that we want to build on. So I want to just kind of address kind of the core question, and then I'm going to talk a bit about our structures, but kind of provide some like larger lessons around this work with this data in particular the 9th grade work. So I'm going to focus on this 9th grade on track work. So the first piece is when we look at our data, of course, we want to make sure that we are triangulating our data and looking at all of the different pieces that connect to a graduation rate for a cohort of students. So one thing our district has been doing for at least the past 7 years is a quarterly cohort meeting with the different assistant principals, grade level principals, where we look at a cohort of students to see, every 10 weeks, how many credits have they earned? What's the attendance of the students in that cohort? What's the behavior, either positive or negative, because we track positive behavior too. We look at things like in-progress grades as an indication of where students are likely to be with their credits. We look at other academic metrics, so that would include grade point average, that would include MAP performance. And then again, on the positive side, we look at the percentage of students that are participating in positive behavior, the positive behavior incentive system. So we have these meetings every quarter with 4 times with 4 different levels of leaders to kind of talk about what this looks like. So we know that this is important because when we think about students earning those assigned credits, there are multiple factors that impact that. Certainly attendance, certainly behavior, both are very tied, certainly grades as well. So that's one really important kind of bedrock institution that we have at our district. In addition, we have student assistance teams that on a weekly basis will look at the performance of students in a cohort to see who's having a challenge with attendance, who's having a challenge with grades, who perhaps is having a challenge with behavior, and what interventions need to be put in place in order to address that. One thing we did last year in particular, we saw that our students are really struggling with that return back, and we didn't have the opportunity to do as robust work we normally would have around getting ready to transition into the school. So we did a goal setting, kind of like, let's stop, breathe, take a step back, and really do a goal setting social emotional learning day for our 9th and 10th grade students. This was the first time we had done something like this, where we kind of stopped all the academics, took a breath and said, hey, let's look at what's really important and critical as it relates to being successful in school. So sessions on, relationships, sessions on conflict management, sessions on goal setting, sessions on college. those types of things to assist students. It's a practice that the team's going to continue to do, because we know one piece of really moving students is making sure you have a positive culture as well. So that's on the school side of some of the pieces. But on my side as superintendent, I also tie this work and all the data that we're looking at to the work within our departments. And so the Educational Services Department, which oversees the schools, also has accountability around these metrics in particular and the work that they're doing to support these metrics. And so we've been able to develop and enhance a system of taking our district key performance indicators, and we have, I mean, unfortunately, probably like 75 of them, kind of divided amongst different departments. And then to make sure that departments are moving towards helping schools achieve those indicators. Okay, you can do the next slide. So some of the next steps that we've learned as it relates to kind of looking at data in that way, it's helped us to identify some additional supports that we need for students. So for example, we know that attendance and climate, especially last year, climate infractions was a challenge at our high schools, not necessarily the climate as much, but the attendance for sure. And so we've added some additional supports to our students using our ESSER funds to connect with the students, to connect with their families, to monitor attendance, to do some goal setting, to make sure attendance is accurate, et cetera, like those types of things. We also were the recipient of a huge Gear Up grant. So we got a $4 million grant to assist us in really infusing our high school and our middle schools with a college-going post-secondary positive culture that also kind of connects with this notion of inspiring kids to stay on track. We started some or brought back some mentorship programs too. One thing last year that we noted was the need to make sure all of the kids had a trusted adult. So you have one adult who is now collecting this street level data, who is able to kind of connect with students to make sure that their needs are being met and to connect them with resources if they weren't. We added some seminar classes to provide some of that executive functioning support for students based on what we're seeing in our data. We also are a big AVID district and have expanded AVID in our district as well. Building on some of our previous work, we expanded our summer orientation so that we provided students more time to get accustomed to coming into high school, both the students and their parents, and again, continued our department performance management sessions. Now, one thing that I didn't mention here, but is also kind of key to our next steps. My district has one high school, one alternative high school, 7 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. And so twice a year, I meet with each principal and we go over all of our key data so that I can talk to them about the progress that's being made and adjustments that are necessary. But they're really important meetings because they help me again to understand what's happening on the ground. It's one thing to look at numbers and data and plans. It's another to really have that conversation with principals, assistant principals, with teacher leaders, coupled with learning walks to see the work happening, every day. So I want to quickly switch to just about 8 more minutes. What I hope will be helpful, I always try to think about some resources and some ways I would direct and encourage people in this work as we work on this 9th grade success work in particular. So these are some things I've learned from being in a district of 400,000 students to a district of 5,000 students. And it really doesn't matter the size, the same pieces are really important. The first, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. The first is what you expect of students, they will rise to. Our theme this year for our district is believe. And we know that, and students know very quickly if you believe in them, in their capacity and what they can or cannot do. And so I always underscore the importance of high expectations for our students, communicating that in any and every way that you can, but also having those same expectations for our staff, our teachers, our administrators as well. We expect excellence of everyone. We support excellence too as well. But that's an important part to start with as relates to this work. The other piece is those structures. So the other side of that, you can have the vision, but you also have to have the action to get there too as well. So things like time to plan, the master schedule, resources to support this work, professional development, time and money, structures so that students are known by everyone. All those things are really important. I know that the GRAD partnership talks about those early warning systems, really important, making sure that students are known before they even come into the high school, really important. And that connects to the next piece, relationships. Relationships matter from a student success perspective, they matter from a safety perspective, and they matter from a student's social emotional learning academic, social emotional learning and academics as well. 4, don't forget about the parents, even though they're in high school. And this is something that this is a hard high school habit to break, because there's a part of us that feels like kids need to figure out how to make it. They can't hold their parents' hands forever. Well, I personally believe they can, and they should, and parents should be involved from 9th through 12th. And there's a lot of fear parents have just because high school is different and it's new and it's bigger, and we have to make sure that we are providing them support and information as much as we are for students as well. Certainly school culture matters, that connects it to expectations. One of the big pieces of data that I always share when I'm talking to staff in particular is what our kids want, what are the aspirations of our students? So we asked our class of 2022 in an exit survey, what are your plans? Do you plan to go to college? Do you plan to, to go right to the military? Do you plan to go to the workforce? This was an important question for us because in some of our planning, there were some folks who assumed that our students weren't necessarily interested in going to college. When we surveyed our students, we saw that 81% of students plan to go actually right away after high school. And of those that remained, over 95% of those who didn't indicate that plan to go at some point. And so though we may have had a vision of what we thought our students wanted, our students were really telling us, oh, no, I need to be prepared. I want to be prepared. This is what my next step is. And then from that, you can build the culture out. Vision matters, connected to expectations, knowing that vision, sharing that vision, and getting folks to buy into that vision. The data for sure matter. If you don't know where kids are, you can't really address it. The data and the data systems are key. It has to be easy to use, accessible, and accurate. Otherwise, we know that how these conversations can disintegrate and people cannot trust the system, and then it doesn't really help kids as we move forward. And then finally, the research matters. This is probably one of my biggest lessons going from a big district to a small district. So in Chicago, we had the luxury of the University of Chicago, the Consortium for School Research, who, they just are producing such quality and actionable data that principals have at their fingertips in Chicago. But when you go outside of even Chicago, never mind the state, those resources are not necessarily there. So we didn't have a research university working with us in the Cleveland Heights University High School District. In Ohio, the work and the accountability is different than the work and accountability in Illinois. So the state of Illinois kind of has this 9th grade, vision as well. Not necessarily the case in Ohio, or it may look a little different. And so that actually has been a big challenge for me. I've been relying on the research coming out of Chicago, but it certainly would be great if I had a research partner in Ohio who could kind of look at our systems and our expectations and our credit requirements to help us make decisions. All right, so I am going to kind of fly by these next slides. I just want to have some resources for you to look at. The next 3 set of slides are just some research that has been helpful for us. So our district took a close look at the Bees Are Better research coming out of the University of Chicago's 2 and 3 project, which shows the impact of GPA in terms of college entrance, and really has used this to push this concept of a 3.0 or higher GPA is something we want all of our kids to aspire to. The next slide is an example of, again, how you can take some of the intentional work coming out of freshman year and use that to help you plan towards the post-secondary success for students. So you'll see in that top brown box that is highlighted in yellow, that represents students from a particular 9th grade class who have a 3.0 or higher. And I think this is like a school. but I can't remember the school. And then you'll see what that translates into in terms of, I'm sorry, this might be a whole class of ninth graders in a district. So what this translates what it translates to in terms of access to selective schools. So you'll see, for example, 2019 students had a 3.0 or higher. Those 2019 students, you'll see the access that they had to different levels of selectivity in terms of college. So the biggest group, 1001, had access to non-selective schools, somewhat selective, 619 of those students, very selective, 91, 12 very selective, et cetera. So again, kind of making that connection between performance, B's are better performance, and college opportunities. And all those pieces are really important from a culture building perspective. But from a street level data perspective, I can tell you how I use this as a principal, where I really knew the kids' grade point averages. I'm weird, don't ask. But I could say, hey, well, maybe I didn't know the GPAs, but I knew if they were getting D's or F's. Now we're late. And we know we're not doing well in geometry. This kind of class we can be late, so those kind of pieces. But what's happening in that exchange, right? So the student knows I see them. The student knows I know where they're supposed to be. The student knows I'm making the connection. The student knows that I really care about their success too as well. All right. And then this final slide, this actually really represents work that we're moving towards in my district. My district is a part of the National Freshman Success Institute, which I highly, highly recommend organizations to get connected to. So we'll be doing we're in this network of training. We'll be coming back to the University of Chicago 2 or 3 more times this year, looking at their framework for freshman success and using that to inform our practice. All right, I think I want to make sure actually that we have time. So I think that these slides are going to be, I'm going to do 1 point for each of these just to make sure we have time for the breakout. I love John Cotter's framework of change. And so I use it in almost any data point, even me personally trying to lose weight, right? I use this in the framework because I think it kind of captures all the different elements of it. So I'll just pick kind of one thing off of these, one lesson learned, and kind of move quickly so we can get to the breakout. So how do we move this work on track? 1, sense of urgency. People need to know the data. How many of your kids from the class of 2024 or 5 were on track, right? Where do we want to get to for your current freshmen? So urgency is really important. You got to communicate it. You got to communicate it a lot. You got to have that slide ready to go. You got to be able to talk about it in many ways, from a data perspective, from an individual student perspective. But this is really important. Urgency is important. Next slide is build a guiding coalition. Got to get a group. Can't just be you. Got to have a post-secondary team, freshman success team, and we need outside folks in. Make sure you do that as well. Make sure that group is educated. Next, enable action. So form a strategic vision. So you do want to plan. You want to have initiatives. You want to have check-in points. You want to have the data that you're looking at. You want to connect it to the larger district plan too as well. So people understand how this is a piece that will move the whole district forward. One big lesson, it's not yours. Other people have to own it. So you got to pull them in. You have to really educate them so that they can be a part of this work and really own the work. Next, enable action. So find time, find money, find the people. Lessons learned, you got to understand the context. If you are newer to this work or newer to a district, there is some history that you got to pay attention to. You got to know. Don't assume that you're bringing in something that people haven't done already, because likely there are lots of folks who are really doing this work and you want to build on that work. Next, short-term wins. This is key to kind of any kind of plan or movement. Short-term wins are really important. So from a freshman on track perspective, how the kids are doing at 5 weeks, if you see some improvements and celebrating that, really important. Oh, at 10 weeks, we had more kids get on board, more kids do better, really big celebration. That's really important for you to do, not only for the students and for the parents, but also for the adults who are doing really, really hard work, especially if it's new work. So magnify wins, the work, and celebrate. There's just short-term wins. Make sure that they are really clear and visible. and connected to the work that people have done to get to that particular win. Sustained acceleration. So you want to make sure that you see this work and the goals of your leaders all up and down the organization. It's a part of the strategic plan. And then as you bring new folks in, you're kind of laying the foundation, the culture of, we're a place where we really support and ensure success of our ninth graders. We're known for the, like in Chicago is a brand for on track work. People know that in Chicago public schools, on track is huge. And it took a while to build that brand, but it's very clear. Anyone who works in a high school knows that the ninth grade is important. It's not even a question. It's not even a debate. That's not necessarily the case in some other places where the work is newer, or maybe they don't have that research frame to help. I would say, finally, from an institute change perspective, we have intentionally kind of infused the focus of this work in our strategic plan. I probably could have done a better job. So one thing I've realized is I kind of come back and double down even more of this. But we funded freshman success coach positions. We funded the work of the team going to the National Freshman Success Institute. Big lesson, COVID has been a challenge. Don't let COVID stop you. Don't let COVID be an excuse. Because one thing that we learned just in looking at our own data, and I love that our team did this, we thought, oh, well, our attendance was a big challenge last year because of COVID. Then when we looked back and really looked at the data, we saw that it wasn't really that. So not that that wasn't a challenge, but that wasn't the biggest driver. So know it's a challenge, but you got to keep going too as well. All right. And then finally, I've said it's different when you're not in a big district. Set the accountability, even if the state doesn't. Ninth grade work, people will get excited. It will move. They'll move quickly, and it'll help other things change in your district or high school. You got to tell the story. You got to work on belief. You got to monitor. And though I haven't talked a lot about this, you have to listen to students. So one thing that I wish I had done when I started in this district was to do more intentional listening tours with students with more targeted questions. So I did kind of general listening, but now that I know more, I want to go back and kind of talk with students about specific issues in particular, like the ninth grade experience, the 10th grade experience. Continue to learn. And then I just added leaning on the research. The Network for College Success actually has lots of research on high school pieces. And so it's a go-to, a bookmarked a resource for me. Great people, great research, always looking for what's next. And it's all on behalf of students. So it's incredible. And with that, I am done.
Thank you, Liz. That was a lot. Thank you so much. You're getting rounds of applause. You may not be able to see but people are clapping for you in all the windows, and definitely rightfully so. Before we move to breakouts, I know there was a lot of information and folks may have some clarifying questions before, but we are going to get a chance to go into the breakout and get a chance to respond and talk to some folks about what we've heard. But does anyone have any clarifying questions or burning questions that you want to ask before we move to that opportunity? Feel free to drop in the chat, or if you want to just unmute, this is a good place for asking questions. So feel free, it's friendly to unmute and ask.
So when you had your meetings, your regular, I don't know if they were monthly, whatever, group meetings, and you were doing that to make sure that you stayed on track. When it seemed like things were off track, like what were some strategies and things that you tried to do?
I could talk about it from the perspective of a principal, then also from an administrator. So as a principal, when we saw things were off track, we would do things like attach students to a trusted adult, require that they go to tutoring, have required parent meetings, go into our teacher meetings, and kind of get a teacher perspective in terms of what was working or not working. We would do things like making sure all teachers knew where kids were academically. So if they saw, a kid, the ninth grade team saw students and they weren't doing well in math, or they were doing well in English, everyone's kind of having a conversation with the kid to support them in that work to do better. And then from an administrator perspective, I would look to see, it's interesting because you do want teams to develop their own strategies kind of around this. And then if there are anything that teams aren't really thinking of, then I would offer some other supports or roles or ideas, too, as well. Very similar to what, I did when I was in a principal in this work.
I think there is a question in the chat. How do you keep the student assistant teams efficient, but also focusing on deep insights? What are the structures you have in place? And then on second question, how do you divide up the data work? Which parts are central and which parts are school level?
So for the student assistance team, in order to focus on deep insights, a couple of things. One, you have to really ensure that whatever is planned is clear, right? So clear agendas, clear outcomes, clear focus areas. You don't necessarily have a lot of time. And so you wouldn't necessarily want to go do everything within those meetings. You want to be really clear of, week 1 we'll look at this, week 2 we'll look at this, week 3 we'll look at that. So that helps the efficiency, but also kind of the way to focus. And so we do things like student assistance team training. We attend the student assistance team meetings as well. I myself will look at the data and the notes when I'm connecting with principals of what's happening in the student assistance teams, because so people kind of know that accountability is coming. And we're going to be asking, tell me what happened in the, happen in these meetings. We'll have some members of our central office team attend as well. In terms of dividing up the data work, we do have one director of data who does an incredible amount of work on Infinite Campus in terms of kind of setting up data views, but also listening and working with principals and assistant principals weekly to see what they need to make sure that she can provide that to them to take that load off of schools. So the schools, what I would say what they do, they create their own trackers kind of students to a certain extent, spreadsheets, things of that nature. We're actually going to make that more systematic this year. So we're making that consistent and something that we build out for them. So that, again, they have that at their fingertips.
Thanks, Liz. There's one more question. I think you answered it in the last one. I think I heard Infinite Canvas, but are there other tools or, so the question is, what data tools does your district use to support the identification of individual student needs as well as groups of students? Are there any other tools that you guys use?
Yeah, we use Infinite Campus right now. I know that there are tools out there we're moving, doing some MTSS stuff with branching minds. So we were investigating maybe using some of those tools. We're actually kind of being deliberate with that because we do want to use as much as we can from Infinite Campus before adding another tool. So right now it's Infinite Campus. And then we also have some homegrown tools that actually our elementary schools we're kind of using to inspire our work. Our elementary schools have used that help us get like a 360 view of a student as well. But we're a smaller district too. So in a bigger district, you likely you need a tool, a big tool like this as well.
Well, thank you. That was helpful. Thank you to those who asked questions. Appreciate it. Going to give everyone a chance now to kind of just, say out loud what you've been thinking or what you hear that resonated. So we're going to send folks to breakouts. We'll have you there for approximately 20 minutes. And in there, when you get there, you might meet a new friend. So introduce yourselves, spend a moment saying hi, what brought you to the meeting, and then have a discussion about what resonated with you. What are you wondering? What might you try? So part of our community of practice is this idea of like, what can we take from this and what can we try? And then when there's about 2 minutes left, Amanda will send a note to let you know that you have 2 minutes. And if folks could just decide, what do you want to bring back to the larger room from your discussion? Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a step that you're going to take, but something that you want to bring back. And then as an individual for yourselves, like what are you leaving with that you might try based on the discussion? So hopefully that all made sense. We're sending you breakouts, meet some new friends, get a chance to talk to one another about what you've heard and what you're wondering and what you might try. All right, with that, I think we're ready to send you off, and we'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Welcome back. It's nice to see you, friends. Welcome back. For those that got cut off mid-sentence, I apologize. Hopefully you were able to say some things that was complete at some point in the breakout, but thank you for coming back. It's good to see you. Hopefully, I know it was a brief time there, hopefully not too unsatisfactory. As Sarah Duncan has started for us, please feel free to give a shout out to anyone that was in your breakout that you want to send a note or of gratitude or whatnot, please do. And then also, it would be great to see and hear what you are bringing back with you. So in the chat, if you want to, just don't hit return. We're going to do what's called a waterfall chat. Type the idea or question that you're bringing back to the main room. If you could type that into the chat, and I'll give you a moment to do that. I'm just going to keep talking while we do it. And then we'll all hit return at the same time. We'll get to see what ideas are coming back to the main space from those rich conversations that you had in the breakout. So go ahead and type into the chat an idea or a question that you're bringing back to the main room.
Clarifying question here. We were supposed to do that as a group. Is it just one person from our group putting that in the chat?
Sure. If you've already identified that, if your group was that good, I know that my groups sometimes don't go as planned. So if you guys have that and your group and someone in your group has it, or you need to call out and say, I'm going to do it for us, that is fine. Thank you for clarifying, Kim. All right, Beverly, it looks like you're it. So hopefully you're typing. I think others have had a chance, but let's go ahead. If you want to hit return, we can see what ideas have come back from the space, or from your breakout spaces. Let's see. Liz, there's a lot of so powerful, Liz. Thank you for doing this work and championing it. Whole child focus, not looking at what's wrong. So instead looking at what we can, and then ideally this notion, I really like the idea of what can we learn, using every opportunity to connect and learn more, and all of those being important data points. I like the idea of you standing in the hallway, Liz, and all of those times are just times to learn more important things. Showing up at meetings, paying attention, reading notes, all the data is important. All right, street data, great. Well, thank you all for bringing that forward, or bringing that to the main room and sharing it with us. A little slice. I know those conversations can be rich, and hopefully you made some new friends while you're there too. All right, so looking forward. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, there was a question there.
First steps. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, this is a question I asked myself, actually.
For the sake of the recording, I'm going to quick read the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from Francis, thanks, Francis. Our group's conversation that we are bringing back to the main group is around implementation. We are marveling at all of the wonderful work and strategies, but are wondering, if we start small, what would Dr. Kirby suggest as first steps?
And I see Sarah Duncan is here, who is a mentor and a champion in this work. And one of the people, I could not have done this without Sarah. So you have a giant among us for sure, as I'm sure many of you are. I would say the first thing is you want to see exactly where you are. You want to look to see, you want to do a real comprehensive needs assessment where you not only look at kind of academically, where kids are and how that connects to outcomes, but you want to do a lot of discussion. You want to talk to kids, you want to talk to teachers, you want to talk to parents. I would start with observation to see what your real challenges are, because sometimes in this work, we work on what we think is a problem, and it might actually be a different problem. I would definitely start there. And then the second thing I would do is to really look closely at the resources coming out because the Network for College Success really has been doing this work for 20 years, and they have so many tools, so many resources, so many things to do they kind of give you that blueprint of how to start this work too. I would definitely start. Those are two things. So kind of see where you are, talk to folks, talk to people, and then really look at because they have the research, but they also have all those other pieces too as well. Just two quick suggestions.
Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and linking through to resources. We can also use this space. So if folks have things, I forgot to encourage that earlier, please feel free to share them here. And I know that we also have, hopefully GRAD partnership will start to have spaces too, where we can start to curate and bring resources together. Stay tuned for more of that. But for now, definitely please call on many of the partners that are here in this space. Great question. I appreciate it, the opportunity. Looking forward, our next community of practice meeting session will be on Wednesday, September 21st. Again, similar time. Please join us and register, and please spread the word. We want to have as many folks as possible join us. And then would love to get your feedback on things. So feeling sort of like as an improvement organization, but also in this GRAD partnership, and we know that insights matter. It would be great to get your insights. So if you wouldn't mind, I think Amanda has dropped in the chat a survey. It's a two-minute max survey to just get your thoughts. It'd be great to hear from you, shaping our community of practice as we go forward, and how do we make these spaces meaningful to folks. So please give us your insights and any comments or suggestions we have about improving the space and what's valuable to you about it. We'd love your feedback. And then lastly, as we close out, I just want to give a big round of applause and a thank you to Liz for taking her time during back to school and sharing. So if you want to, please feel free to unmute, make this loud, make it joyful, make it full of love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job,
Thank you, Liz.
Bravo.
Awesome job, Liz. Awesome job.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liz. Fantastic.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Our community is as rich as the people who are in it. So thank you for your engagement. Thank you for participation. And would love to know what you're taking with you or what you might try. So what is one step that you can take by next week? So what are you going to do? And we can all support each other in that and hold each other accountable. So if you want to drop that in the chat, say it out loud, put it out in the universe of something that you're taking from today's session. Maybe it's a conversation you're having, maybe it's a follow-up, maybe it's reading something, maybe it's going to the Network for College Success website, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, please, share it because it's our engagement, it's our commitment to each other and to this work, and then we can help support each other in doing it. So say it out loud and we'll hopefully support you in that. And I just want to thank you for being here. Thanks. Good luck for the beginnings of school, for those who are already in it, those who are starting, those who are supporting. Thank you for all you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you next time.